I mean, the obvious one with publishing is that, especially when you're in an area like critical political economy, international political economy, in these areas, you are in a position to think through what's at stake globally, socially, economically, politically, without a lot of separation across these. In a sense, there's a lot of transversality, a lot of interconnectedness that you're already dealing with and thinking about when you begin your projects. But each of you will be thinking through at this stage as you're writing in PhDs, what of course is your intervention, what is the thing you want to be known for saying, or what's going to be your kind of area, and what occurs to you as being quite at the moment, let's say, most important for your own project and your own research trajectory. My advice is to get started as soon as possible, write as much as possible from the very beginning. This was actually guidance that was given to me by my supervisors in the early stages, including Andreas Bieler, who was my supervisor for my PhD at Nottingham. And it was very much write, get in there. Don't be afraid of just getting things on paper. And don't be afraid of writing potential articles. You don't, even though this material is part of your PhD, there's absolutely nothing wrong with getting articles out that are also going to be part of your PhD. So when you start looking at different journals, you need to know who the editors are, what kinds of things the journal already publishes, what type of journal it is, as it were. So there are a lot of things to think about in that remit. So let's just start with the journal, and then we can think about other tips, bits and bobs to do with, how to think through actually writing the thing. So before you even submit, first of all, and you look at the different journals as they are, one thing you can think about is, as you're reading around for your PhD, some journals are just going to come up more often than others, depending on the topic, right? Because there are different, let's say, bodies of knowledge that each journal kind of becomes known for. And that's a thing that's quite important to a journal editor, that those are the things. So, for example, an obvious one being Review of International Political Economy. So that's one that's publishing on sometimes finance, sometimes migration, sometimes other things to do with work and labor. It kind of also depends on who the editors are at the time, but the sooner you get to know, you familiarize yourself with those kinds of things, the better, because then you know how your arguments can become part of the body of knowledge that journal kind of cultivates, as it were. So what you need to do then is think through, right, what kind of journal would I pitch, where would I pitch my work? To prepare your manuscript, obviously, read the manuscript submission guidelines. Because if you haven't done that, they're just going to desk reject. It's called desk reject. They're going to look at it and go, you can't even be bothered to look at what we asked you to do to submit to this journal. So that has to do with things like word count. So keep within the word count. It's a skill, getting your thing to the word count, to the right words. Just because you know how to keep writing doesn't make you a good scholar. It just means you're, to be honest, it can be a bit sloppy to do it that way. You're going to need more words for your PhD. But for a journal article, condense it, be explicit. I mean, it makes a piece much more coherent if you can get it within a word count. Find out if your references are included in that word count or not. Make sure you're using the right, obviously, whether it's MLA, whether it's Harvard method, you're using the right citation style and referencing style. And then also look at the other things around it. Is this blind reviewed? Is it single or double blind reviewed? They usually are, and I think it's worth making sure. There are, from time to time, you can select whether you'd like your name as an author to be known. Again, that's up for you. Have you followed basic conventions in academic writing? So don't use, obviously, swear words. I got a great paper recently from marking essays. There were at least 2 swear words in there, and I thought, I'm pretty sure this isn't even acceptable in, well, I mean, I guess in a blog post maybe, but okay. So anyway, try not to use too many colloquialisms either. But anyway, read as much as you can within the journal that you're going to target. And also the obvious one too, people sometimes forget this. If somebody else has written something in that journal on a similar topic, whatever it is, just read it and build on it. Or make, I don't know, some intervention, some kind of, and say it early on, to be honest with you, chances are they'll get it to review. So also, if they do, be careful in a sense of how you're writing about it. It's okay to not agree, but you've got to do it in such a way that makes it clear that you've read and you're building on the knowledge that that person has set a precedent for. With journal, with the editors on different boards, find out who they are and try to find them during the cocktail reception or after their paper that they've presented. It's absolutely fine. And that's a bit networky, but it's a good way of doing it because then they get to know who you are. And then when the paper crosses the desk, I remember this person, got a good impression of them because they told me a fun, interesting story about, I don't know, for me, maybe it would be like artificial intelligence, robotics, when this robot fell into the pond. Okay, maybe I wouldn't necessarily tell that story, but okay, if you can spin it in a way that becomes of interest, then and you are smart. Of course, you are smart. You're at this workshop. You're doing a cool PhD, I'm sure. So the point is just to make that kind of like known. Again, next thing to do after it's written is not to be afraid. Do not be too precious. Send it to people to review. The more people you have on site who are potentially willing to help you out, the better. Can't just be your supervisor. Your supervisor should help you, but obviously the more people you can get to read stuff, especially if they're experts in that area, the better. Because they have no reason not to do it. And especially if they think you're good, they're going to do it. And then you're going to put them in the acknowledgements afterwards. That is such a good way to do it. And the people who don't do it, because it's sometimes easier not to, because it's kind of embarrassing, but actually if you can do it and they give you comments and so on and so on, do what they say because they know, right? They've been around forever, some of them. You know what I mean? The more organized you are when you go into putting the text on a bit of paper, the better. So look at how within the journal that you're pitching to, how how other authors have organized their articles, right? Because there are different traditions and different conventions in each journal. So the obvious one is that you're going to do the introduction, paragraphs, telling your story, giving the methodology section. Obviously, within your introduction, you're going to tell everyone what the argument is. You're not going to leave it till the end. I mean, you guys are also marking, probably many of you doing teaching and so on and so on. Nothing worse than somebody who keeps their argument till the very end. You're like, it's not a mystery. I'm not playing some kind of game. So tell them at the beginning. Okay, anyway, and in social science, there are heuristics involved. It's actually okay to start to, even before you're writing the piece, to have a sense of what kinds of arguments you're going to make. A lot of you will be doing it field work and empirical work, but because of that process around how the things operate, then you're going to go into the field with a set of curiosities that you might have a suspicion already of how that looks and what you maybe your findings would potentially sort of look like. So it's a case of then within those perimeters and those parameters, you're going to think, right, what kinds of what exactly are my discoveries going to be, and how am I going to bring them out, and what am I going to say in this article to show like this is how I make an intervention. So you start off with your sort of, you could use it, nobody talks about a hunch method, but it's sort of like this. It's sort of thinking through, right, okay, so we've seen these trends so far, and maybe we want to think through, so we could even say something like COVID. So what's going to happen with kind of the home working environment? Are we going to see a rise? Well, we already are in the kinds of software that's on the market for managing of performance electronically. So this was a trend that already existed before COVID, and now you're seeing a rise in that trend. What does that mean for workers themselves? Oh, proofread. Proofread the text a billion times before you submit it. Have no typos. Okay. Get someone else to do it, maybe. I don't know. It's always nice if you have an objective other who can, whoever they are, to help out with that kind of stuff. I know myself never have, so I've always done it myself. But the more kind of maneuvering and proofreading and stuff like, oh no, wait, I do. My mom, she will often look over things for me. Okay, so let's see, tables and figures. If you're going to use tables and figures, make sure you know whether the journal, sometimes they don't allow you to include journals and tables. Good to know before you start chucking them in. Don't give your piece to more than one journal at the same time. Obvious one, it's a no-no. You probably already know that. Make sure you write a cover letter. Keep this relatively short and simple, but highlight the features of the article and your arguments within that cover letter, because that's nice. And it brings them in right at the beginning. That's a good thing to do. Make sure you send it to the right person. Make sure you, make sure if there's a deadline to do with a special issue that you keep within the deadline. Look at things like their acceptance rate and their rejection rate. Not that that should necessarily condition you or steer you, as it were, but if you get rejected, let's say desk reject, at least you don't feel so bad. You think, well, they reject most of them anyway. The reason they do that is because they want to improve their ISI rankings in a way. So if you have higher rejects, it can result in higher ISI rankings, okay? It doesn't always, but it can. They also might be thinking we want to preserve the quality of the journal. And also it can just simply be that they just, at that point, that argument, they don't need it to be made at that point in time because, oh, I don't know, they've already been through that debate. There are sometimes quite unfortunate circumstances I've come across, for example, with Capital and Class. Okay, so let's say we've just had a special issue on this topic. Then we get an article, I don't know, 3 weeks later, the thing has been published, like, this is super good. Of course, you wouldn't reject it on that basis, but you think, I wish we'd known about this. You know what I mean? So it could be in, so anyway, there's a timing thing sometimes, not always, but it can be the case. So if there's a reject, the other thing to do is get as much as you can from the editor to find out why, you know, and also don't take it personally. Try to be as objective as you can about your work. Don't get too stressed out or disappointed. Most things are rejected in academic world. I guess you know that, should know that by now. If you apply for a grant, you're almost completely you're very unlikely to get it. But guess what? The more times you try, the probability is improved. And the same thing goes for journal articles. So if editors tell you this is what you should do it. And sometimes they're going to tell you stuff that you think this isn't necessary to do either. It's good if you have a good supervisor who can help you through that process, or someone, whoever it is. Because there are times when reviews are given to you and you have to read into how the reviewer is writing that. I've had one recently with something that's not, it's not a publication as such, but it was something else. And it was a bit weird because my work is very European in this particular area. And I got a review and everything they were asking me to do was from the American kind of case. And I thought, this isn't going to work. So I talked to the effectively commissioner, like I say, it's an EU project. I said, I can't really include this, all of it. I mean, I can include a lot of it, some of it, but it's not the European, this is a European project, so I can't do only American cases. It looks a little strange. They were like, yeah, you're right. So this is the point. If you think that the reviewer has said things that in a way they didn't think through the implications for your piece or for the journal itself, or ask the editor. Say, okay, dear whoever it is, get on the phone with them. Here's the thing. They've asked me to do this. No, I don't think it's, or if what they've asked you to do totally changes the argument, then you have to think through, okay, do you want to write a new article to get in this journal? Or do you want to just cut your losses, move on, and get your argument in another journal? Because if they've asked you to change the argument, sometimes they just wish they had written the piece. I guess this is something you may as well know. This does happen. Ooh, I wish I thought of this. Ooh, I wish I'd done that. And then they might even change your argument. Who knows why? It's weird. Reviewers can be totally weird. If you think, oh, actually, I can't do that, then don't do it. Because like life is short, things move, change quickly, you know, accelerated life, whatever. Just take it somewhere else. I think that's pretty much what I had prepared for today for you to think through when you are starting this process of getting your stuff published. Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, again, thank you very much for inviting me to do this. And I hope it's been helpful. A lot of the things you may have known already. Maybe there are things you don't know already. You're by all means welcome to get in touch with me and ask me for tips if you'd like. But yeah, so those are the things that I think are important to think about. And I hope this has been helpful. I'm going to end the recording and hope to see all of you soon in person at another amazing CPERN. So any of the ESAs or CSE or Capital and Class type of event. Okay then, see you guys again.